Chapter 5, right. I liked your point yesterday that Paul lays the groundwork so nicely.
Oh,
now he's getting to the real point. Now, by the way, you guys have got to get rid of this evil person, right?
Yeah.
That's very specific, isn't it?
That's, yes.
But he laid the groundwork with a lot of stuff.
And it's all about that wisdom business that he was bringing in. And
very clever.
And I know years ago when I first read that, I thought, why does he go off onto a different tangent? And actually he doesn't. He's just, it's beautiful. He's laying that groundwork for all these problems. The problems occur with them at Corinth because they were being fleshly minded. And looking to the world's wisdom. But not the wisdom of God.
And you made the point yesterday, which is a very good one, that they had all these gifts, but that didn't turn them into genuine saints.
You're exactly
and that's
right.
a very important point.
Exactly. Well, and you know something else, Anthony, I was thinking about, this is pretty awing to me along that same line, is all the problems they had, various kinds, we're fixing to read about more here today, but it's interesting that in spite of those spiritual gifts that were among them, it wasn't the spiritual gifts among them that were setting these things in order.
That's exactly
or
right.
making them, correcting them. Actually, it took an apostle intervening. That didn't mean that the gifts were not genuine. They certainly were. Paul doesn't doubt that. But all these problems were there, and it wasn't the working of the gifts that was setting that in order. It was the apostleship. It was a father in the gospel. And a person of leadership and wisdom. It's interesting.
It's fascinating, because certainly that has been a huge area of dispute, hasn't it? And very understandably, people want to see, now is God really at work?
Surely.
Show me. And
right.
there's a plus in the Gospels on that. All those miracles are amazing. There's a negative. You evil people, you won't do anything till you see a sign and a wonder.
That's right.
And there's only one, that's the resurrection.
There you go.
Isn't that one?
That's right.
It's almost as if God is trying, I say this with caution, but he's testing this a little bit to see, what are people going to do? Let me do all these miracles. It still won't believe, right? So let me try something else, see if that's any better.
That's right.
We do what we can.
Well, that's right. That's exactly right. Well, let's look then at this fifth chapter. And we do launch again into this question of wisdom, and that is, how do you deal with an individual who is acting inappropriately in his life and in relative to his faith and his relationship to the church. What do you do with that?
You got to do something dramatic, haven't you?
I think apparently so.
It's worse even than the Gentiles are up to.
Oh, my land, yes.
It's atrociously bad.
So nowadays, those who feel like that it doesn't matter what people do, and that shouldn't affect their relationship to the church and the relationship to God, need to read the 5th chapter of 1 Corinthians.
The famous thing, judge not. What is Paul judging here?
That's right.
He certainly is judging. He shouldn't be doing that.
In the best sense of the word.
Right, in the right sense.
That's right.
Exactly.
I love it.
5.
Chapter 5, verse 1, it is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and of a kind that is not tolerated even among pagans. For a man has his father's wife. Oh my goodness. Verse 2, and you are arrogant. Ought you not rather to mourn? Let him who has done this be removed from among you. Very sharp. Wow.
Right to the point.
Verse 3, for though absent in body, I'm present in spirit, and as if present, I have already pronounced judgment on the one who did such a thing. Verse 4, when you are assembled in the name of the Lord Jesus, and my spirit is present, with the power of our Lord Jesus, you are to deliver this man to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, so that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord.
Powerful.
Wow, it's really, it's very direct, very sharp, very strong.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's doing this for the benefit not only of the group, but the man himself. I take this to be that he will be crippled by some terrible disease, and this will bring him to his senses and ultimately get saved.
That's right.
It's interesting that you are to hand this man over to.
It is
not
interesting.
I, the apostle, but you people had better hand this man over to Satan.
Wow. It's certain that he cannot serve Satan.
Yes.
And carry on in the congregation as though nothing was wrong. This is amazing. Not only is it unacceptable for the congregation, others may then be disturbed, as they should. Others will be upset. Others will follow his example and think it doesn't matter how they conduct themselves.
And what will the world say about the church?
Yes, and what will the world say?
What sort of impression are you getting? Well, even Gentiles don't get up to this sort of thing mostly, right?
That's right, that's right.
Then in our time you can think of abortion and the ordination of homosexuals and all of that, which would be parallel things which are tolerated, and Paul, I think, would be aghast at some of the things that go on.
Totally unacceptable. And not just things that relate to a particular era and time, as people often say, well, that was Paul. But it's about the human condition. And it's about our relationship with what's acceptable in the sight of God. That hasn't changed.
That hasn't changed. It never changes.
So I think you're right, too, and it's going to become evident. This was also the appropriate thing for the man who was involved in this wrongdoing. This is a way in which he actually would be helped. Apparently he was very strident in his conduct, in his ill conduct. And so the way that Paul directs that the church congregation should handle this matter is to set him out from among them. It's not acceptable that he would continue.
We don't know now how the story ended. We'll find out one day whether that effect was brought about. I like to think about being present in the spirit and not present in the body. It's nothing to do with being dead, by the way. See, they've transferred this to the state of death. It's nothing to do with that. But Paul is there thinking about them, and yet not there physically. That's fine. We can deal with that, but it's nothing to do with him dying and going to heaven.
More the mind of Paul, which is the mind of Christ. If we have the mind of Christ, we have the Spirit of Christ. Paul, then by extension, it might say, my spirit is with you.
Absolutely.
Meaning his mind, his wisdom, and which is the wisdom of
his
God.
children, right? After all, he's the father. He's very concerned with these people.
So they might do those things that he's saying and count it as though Paul were actually present with them. That's how firm and solid this is.
Obviously right. Very clear. It's not difficult material.
No, it's actually very straightforward. Also shows, though, how important it is that wrongdoing not be accepted as the norm in churches. And nowadays, that isn't, I mean, we see that happening, I think, a lot, even in evangelical churches.
We do.
Unfortunately, where we decide to accept error, wrongdoing as the norm.
I know.
And this is totally unacceptable according to the Bible. How would we say that the Bible is the Word of God and then ignore these areas of that?
Very bad. One ought to say the system doesn't work. When you look at the divorce rate, apparently, in the evangelical church, it's more or less the same as outside the church.
Yes.
Anybody with half an inch of intelligence would have to say, listen, this system doesn't work.
Yes.
So let's sit down on Monday and say, what's going wrong here?
Yes.
It doesn't happen. It tends to grind on. But that's a very telling statistic. If it's anywhere near right.
I like the statement Paul made about how that we should not grieve the Spirit of God.
Absolutely.
We can actually grieve God by our conduct in such inappropriate ways.
Glad you mentioned that, because the Spirit is clearly not impersonal. It's one of those things I've tried to correct, and we tend to go from one extreme to the other. Well, the Spirit is not a third person. I see that. No, but is the Spirit impersonal? No, very personal, because you can't grieve an impersonal thing. So the Spirit is God or Jesus in person operating. That makes good sense of that doctrine.
Exactly. Verse 6.
Yes.
Your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Cleanse out the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, as you really are unleavened. For Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. Wow. Verse 8, let us therefore celebrate the festival, not with the old leaven, the leaven of malice and evil, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Wow.
Very important to my Armstrong friends. You see, we said, let's be keeping the feast, so in other words, we better keep it that yes. Passover week.
Yeah.
And we missed the point entirely, because the verb there, to be technical, is a progressive present tense. So let us be keeping the festival continuously.
Continuously, yeah.
And then,
right.
as if that's not enough, he talks about the unleavened bread of genuineness.
Yes.
Not literally, because we were busy vacuuming our cars and our houses, for that 1 week in the year. How very misguided that was. Yes, we were trying to get it right, but we got it terribly wrong.
Well intended, but
very mistaken.
Off the mark.
Off the mark.
Completely, yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Well, I think this isn't hard to see in context that they're going to keep this feast in a spiritual sense, spiritually
obviously,
speaking.
why not?
And they're going to clear out the leaven, not literal leaven like they did under Moses' law, but they're going to clear out the leaven of insincerity and clear out the leaven of untruth.
Absolutely.
and then celebrate continually, daily.
Absolutely, on a daily basis.
The feast in the spiritual sense. And Christ is our Passover. He is our Passover lamb, for goodness sake. So that's certainly spiritual. Absolutely. Not intended to be literal.
We did not understand that for many years, and people to this day are still insisting on obedience to the letter. The key is the letter of the law of Moses as distinct from the spirit of the law of Messiah.
Yes, yes.
There is actually a rabbinical saying which says that when Messiah comes, keeping the Torah of Messiah, they use that phrase, Rabbi Sam.
Yes.
It will be as though keeping the Torah of Moses was nothing.
Yes.
That's a very interesting thing. They recognize that when Messiah's Torah comes, it will be as if you never even bothered to keep any Torah. I mean, they're trying to make the point that Messiah's Torah, that comes in rabbinical writings, that phrase, that all, by the way, is in the Billerbeck. That's a commentary on the New Testament from the Midrash and the Torah from the Jewish writings, Talmud. Yes. It's only in German, unfortunately, but it's an absolute treasure because it shows how much of this is reflected in Jewish circles.
Wow.
The Torah of Messiah in the spirit. It's the law in the spirit, but not the law in the letter.
Right. Wow.
That's very clear to me.
And not to mention also this, I think it's unfortunate to see Gentile folks who maybe, again, well-intended but very misguided, thinking, well, we're going to keep the Passover.
Yes.
Well, if you mean we're going to keep it in the spiritual sense, with Christ as your Passover lamb and with this bread of sincerity and truth and so on, then great, yes, we all do that. And as you say, regularly, all the time.
All the time.
But on the other hand, if you as a Gentile say, I'm really going to keep the Passover in a literal sense, not spiritually, but in a literal sense, then Gentiles, it seems to me, are actually forbidden from participating in that feast.
Unless they want to be full proselytes.
That's right. They're going to have to become an absolute proselyte, cross over to Judaism.
That's a great point.
In order to be able to do that.
And that's why Paul is so radical. There's only one commentator I know, Jim Tabor, who was formerly in the Armstrong movement. Now he's teaching with Jews, I think. Yes. He's bold enough to say that Paul says to all of them, Jew and Gentile, don't get circumcised. Most commentators don't want to quite risk that. But then you divide the church. Well, the Jews should still be circumcised, but not the Gentile. That's not quite radical enough. So Jim Tabor points out that Paul says, I'm telling all of you now in Galatians, do not get physically circumcised. That's the exact opposite of Genesis 17.
Yes.
Isn't that radical?
That is tremendous.
So if we say, well, the Gentiles certainly shouldn't do that, but we can let the Jews keep the new moons and the Sabbath. I don't think Paul was in favor of that, because then you've divided the church.
Of course, that's right. Which is the problem that they had at Antioch then in Galatians, where that we have certain brethren from James coming, and then the problem between. But it was all about that very kind of issue. It
took a while to work through that.
Yeah, sure it did.
James was, I think, a little slower. Peter, went back on where he was.
Yes.
Paul is leading the flock there.
Yeah, this was his thing right there.
Unity at all costs. Right? Isn't that fascinating? So we see in the New Testament then some growth and some errors in a way. They're not errors in the absolute sense, but we can see them fumbling along until they all get it clear. Right. A lesson for us.
Exactly. Well, and the 15th chapter of Acts, of course, was a landmark moment in all of this, and tremendous.
Right. It is. And that's a big subject, because keeping the new moons, I say to people, if you really want to keep the Sabbath and the holy days, you must keep the new moons. It's all part of the same trio in Colossians 2 there.
Exactly.
And I wish you luck, teaching your neighbor to keep the new moons. What are you going to do, stare at the moon every first day of the month? I don't think this helps the cause at all.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. Verse 9. I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people. Not at all meaning the sexually immoral of this world, or the greedy and swindlers or idolaters, since then you would need to go out of the world.
Absolutely.
True. But now I'm writing to you not to associate with anyone who bears the name of brother, if he is guilty of sexual immorality or greed, or is an idolater, or reviler, or drunkard, or swindler, not even to eat with such a one. Wow. Verse 12, for what have I to do with judging outsiders? Is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge? God judges those outside. Purge the evil person from among you. Oh my goodness.
Very clear. Isn't that wonderfully clear?
Yeah. I like that a lot.
So we are to judge, but Paul's domain of judgment is strictly the Christian fellowship. Heaven forbid that we should try to judge the world now. We are going to judge the world. We'll get to that in chapter 6.
Right.
But right now, you'd have to leave the world entirely, would you not?
Yes. And this kind of judgment in the best sense, judgment in the right sense of the word, has a essential role to play in the conduct of the church. And here we find an example of that.
It's discrimination, right? Obviously. Discernment.
Right.
Otherwise, you're approving sin, and that's a disaster. If you say, well, it doesn't matter what you do.
Exactly.
That's a terrible approval of error.
So then the whole program collapses.
It really does.
That's
right. Then you're going to get the extreme of that, is that people want to judge us if we keep a birthday or a wedding anniversary, or the length of hair exactly to the inch. So that's carrying that judgment principle far too far.
And none of which do you have direct scripture that forbids those things or directs those matters. Here we do have, though, sexual immorality is addressed head on very clearly. Absolutely. There's no question. That it's inappropriate and unacceptable.
Absolutely, because you're going to lose your salvation.
Yes.
If you continue unrepentant.
That's right.
In the area of adultery, drunkenness, homosexuality, and so on. He lists them. You're not going to be in the kingdom, so you might as well forget about being a Christian.
Exactly.
Forget it. The whole venture is vain.
Paul speaks of that in other locations. Those who are of such a conduct of life, and he's talking about Christians. He said they will not inherit.
We're going to get to that.
Not inherit the kingdom of God. That's great.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So these things are very important, and appropriate, proper judgment is also very appropriate, I think, necessary.
Yes. That was a short chapter.
It was. But some important principles laid out there.
Yes, very compelling, actually. I think as you get used to Paul over these many years, I find him very convincing. I don't want to argue with any of that.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know how you would successfully sit down and refute Paul. It just people don't really refute him today. Those who are his opposition today want to wave him off.
Yes,
they don't really want to say here's where he's wrong and here's where. Instead, they just say, oh, he's not an apostle, he's false or something like that. This is ridiculous.
I believe in Jesus but not in Paul.
Yeah.
That's a disaster.
Yeah, terrible idea.
And then there are books, even commentaries, who try to undermine what Paul obviously said. And in other words, Paul was pro-Mosaic laws from start to finish. He never questioned any of that. in the spirit, he certainly is in favor of every jot and tittle, as was Jesus. However, fulfilling the law doesn't mean keeping it all in the letter.
That's right, that's right.
If it did, then everybody wanting to be part of the program has to be physically circumcised.
Absolutely.
We know Paul said.
Yes.
So the text that's so powerful in Galatians, he says, let me tell you, all of you, if you get physically circumcised, brackets, don't do it.
That's right.
Then you will be obliged to keep the whole law, don't do it.
That's right.
So tell me, what is this whole law which you shouldn't keep?
And you know what's interesting there too, Anthony, just earlier in the same book of Galatians, Paul has pointed out that you do not have the option of choosing, picking and choosing what you will do of the law. This is an all or nothing program.
Exactly right.
That, so if you're going to keep the law, then, and literally keep the law, then you are bound then to keep the entire law. Absolutely. The law itself requires that.
In the letter.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a package.
So isn't it much better to celebrate the Spirit, the things of the Spirit of God, which the law foreshadowed, but now we participate in. And here's Jesus, our Passover. Isn't that wonderful? Let's rejoice in that. And let's keep that feast, not literally like they did, but let's keep it with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Oh my goodness. And put away the leaven. You know, in this case, it's the evil working in this particular man, for goodness sake. Put that away.
And if you keep the Day of Atonement literally now, you are actually denying the sufficiency of what Christ did.
Yes.
That's the danger.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Paul says, do not go into these shadows, because you're implying, you're not saying it, of course, but you're implying, I don't think Jesus is enough.
Yes, yes.
That's a very serious error.
Well, and that was a key issue for Paul in much of his writings. That's what he was fighting for, the sufficiency of Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
And if we said we need Jesus plus Moses or Jesus plus the law, then to Paul, you're not recognizing the all-sufficiency of our master, leader, teacher, rabbi, Jesus, who is the Messiah.
Now, if you turn that on the issue of the Trinity, we are saying that the unity of God, the unitary monotheistic creed of Jesus, is absolutely sufficient. There's nothing in Scripture at all to say, now we're going to move on to something greater, expanding the Shema to include Paul, as Paul is supposed to have said. That's simply wrong. You have to have a whole set of books on that, not one half verse.
That's right.
We're not very good at getting this right, are we, human race? You know, we could do a lot better.
That's right.
Give the human race half an inch, they'll take a mile.
That's right. That's right.
Predictably, I sometimes think, you know, we're bound to get it wrong. Unless you've got a very strong corpus of people saying, stop it, you know. Prophetic voices saying, no, don't go there.
Well, this is a sharp teaching by Paul. I mean, he's dealing with a very difficult circumstance. It may not have been popular for everyone, what he was saying, but nevertheless, what he was saying was right and important. And
he's not finished with sexual matters too. In chapter 6, we're going to come back.
Oh, yes, that's right.
It's a constant battle, isn't it? In that area.
And as we said, not anything to do with the moment in time in which they were living. It is the human condition that is being dealt with in these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.